What would a game look like if it were constantly reinventing itself right in front of your eyes, all the while lying to you about what it actually was? Well, probably a lot like Inscription. While it starts off as a very fun, horror-themed roguelite card game, dig beneath that somewhat familiar surface and you'll find no shortage of exciting twists, clever ideas, and consistently surprising iterations on the fundamentals it hooked me with in its very first minutes. A lot of what's so great about Inscription is the unexpected places it ends up taking you. To that end, I'm going to try to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible, which means limiting the gameplay we show to what's primarily shown off in trailers. That said, all you have to do is watch one of those trailers to understand there's something going on here that isn't just another Slay the Spire-style entry into a genre that's getting a bit overcrowded. You start off playing a roguelike card game against a shadowy AI adversary, but the overall structure isn't actually one that's meant to be infinitely replayed. It took me about 9 hours to reach the end of Inscription, and it's a proper campaign that tells an interesting and spooky story around its genuinely fun card battles. During each match, you'll play creature cards onto your side of the board, which will automatically attack whatever is across from them each turn, be that opposing creatures or nothing at all. If it's the latter, any damage they would have done is instead added to the opponent's side of a tipping scale, but any damage you take will tip it back toward your direction. Once one side of that scale is at least 5 damage heavier than the other, the match is over. That makes each fight a strategic tug-of-war, where taking a hit one turn could mean you're just out of reach of winning the next. Exciting bosses can also challenge you with prolonged encounters and unique twists, ranging from a miner who turns your creatures into chunks of gold, to some later ones that broke my expectations in legitimately jaw-dropping ways. That's the core of Inscription that always stays constant, but the creatures you'll use, the way you play them, the extra mechanics they have, and the structure of the metagame around each match all shift drastically as you progress. For example, the resource for playing stronger cards starts out by forcing you to sacrifice small creatures to fuel bigger ones, which can make for some tough but rewarding choices. But before long, you'll also get cards that instead spend bones generated when friendly creatures die, adding another layer of planning to each decision. Later sections play with even wilder systems, which keep Inscription's relatively simple fundamentals constantly fresh. Similarly, it may begin with a branching roguelike structure where you pick paths and upgrade your deck along the way, but it doesn't stay that way the whole time. The skin and bones of Inscription can change just as dramatically as its meat, but the heart at its center always keeps everything pumping to a familiar beat. That's good too, because it's not too difficult to stumble upon exploitable strategies that feel great in the moment, but ultimately reduce any tough choices substantially, meaning certain sections might start to wear thin if they went on for too long on their own. Instead, you get a delicious platter of all the games Inscription could be, without any one of them feeling like a disjointed demo or half-baked idea. Of course, slinging cards is only part of what Inscription will ask you to do. In wonderfully strange fashion, it will occasionally have you stand up from the literal table you're playing at to explore the 3D room it's held in. There you'll solve simple escape room style puzzles, like finding the combination to a safe, many of which are directly tied to the card game itself in clever ways. They aren't the most complex riddles in the world, with the matches themselves being where I had most of my fun, but the overall vibe of Inscription shines in these sections. Its dark, retro-ish art style is excellent across the entire campaign, and the creepy mood throughout is perfectly unsettling without ever really dipping into genuine horror. And while it's hard to say anything at all about the plot itself without ruining some of the surprise, Inscription's haunted story is a genuinely compelling one as well. It provides a great and often unexpectedly funny structure to house all of its clever card-based ideas, feeling like the kind of urban legend you'd find propagated across creepypasta posts on an old internet message board, but not in a way that's dated or derivative either. Inscription is a surprising and delightful meta twist on the digital card games that have exploded in recent years. Its unsettling story is the perfect vehicle for its ever-evolving mechanics, which constantly keep the simple but entertaining card game at its heart fresh. It's a wonderfully strange game, but Inscription is truly excellent because it's also a genuinely fun one. And for the best experience, you should probably go in knowing as little as possible. For more spooky games, check out our reviews of the Dark Pictures anthology House of Ashes or Resident Evil 4 VR. And for everything else, keep it right here on IGN.